All right, let's just dive right into this explainer, where we're going to unpack the ultimate frameworks for navigating stress, conflict, and power dynamics using history's greatest strategies. You know that feeling when you're just totally overwhelmed by external pressures, intense office politics, or literally just the chaotic nature of the world around you? Well, this is exactly what you need. We're going to look at how totally different philosophies, from ancient Stoicism to Machiavellian realism, teach us how to anchor ourselves and actually navigate our environment strategically.
But before we really get going, I want you to consider a fundamental question, this silent question that literally every philosophy of power tries to answer. Where does control actually live? Is it inside you, in your thoughts and your reactions, or is it outside you, built into your reputation, your influence, and the structures you create? Keep this question right in the back of your mind, because absolutely everything we discuss today hinges on how you choose to answer it.
So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to hit the trap of reactivity, mastering the inner citadel, navigating the outer kingdom, the power of silence, and finally becoming calm and calculated. Let's get into it.
Starting with Section 1, the trap of reactivity, and how we actually sabotage our own brains.
Let's kick things off with a pretty wild, hard truth about what happens when we operate without emotional control. According to a Stanford study, just 30 minutes of complaining, just half an hour, actually shrinks your hippocampus. And that's the part of your brain heavily linked to problem solving. Think about that for a second. Whether you're the one venting or you're just stuck listening to someone else complain for 30 minutes, you're physically impairing your brain's ability to figure things out. Uncontrolled emotion and constant venting, they don't just waste your time, they literally weaken your cognitive tools.
And this right here, this perfectly illustrates what psychologists call an external locus of control. It's basically the trap of letting the outside world dictate your internal state, which completely stunts your personal and professional growth. People with an external locus of control firmly believe that life just happens to them. They think success or failure is purely a matter of luck or what other people do to them. And that leads straight into a really helpless victim mentality, where complaining feels like the only option.
So let's compare reactivity versus solution-based thinking. Think about walking through a park and seeing a bunch of litter. If you spend all your energy getting mad, complaining that people are awful, well, your brain is stressed, and guess what? The park is still dirty. But if you flip that script, if you focus on actionable change, like advocating for more trash cans or a better pickup schedule, you're suddenly empowered. The problem actually gets fixed. You've shifted your focus from emotional distress to taking actionable responsibility.
Which brings us to a tough pill to swallow. The idea of fairness is kind of just a psychological trap. If you're walking around assuming the world is going to treat you fairly just because you're a good person, you are setting yourself up for massive frustration. Waiting around for fairness is a totally reactive mindset. It just hands all your power over to the environment around you, making you incredibly predictable. Moving on to Section 2, mastering the inner citadel, or as I like to call it, the Stoic defense.
Since we know the world is unpredictable and, frankly, unfair, our very first move is to build a foundation that nobody can shake. Think about a leader like the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius. He survived plagues, brutal wars, nonstop betrayal, and he did it by developing a massive internal locus of control. He turned emotion into data rather than a command. That's the Stoic boundary. You draw a hard line. You do not control the markets, the weather, or your coworkers' opinions. You only control your thoughts, your impulses, and your interpretations. An insult only stings if you agree with it, right? So in this way, external events simply cannot corrupt your mind without your active consent.
Now, here is where things get super fascinating. We have this massive dialectic clash between two major philosophies. On one side, you've got Stoicism. The Stoic says, master yourself. They want independence from the outside world and prioritize personal virtue. But look over at the Machiavellian side. Niccolo Machiavelli lived through insanely unstable political times, and his whole vibe was, master the game. He argues that you have to focus on the outcome and actively exert influence over those external forces to survive. One builds your emotional immunity, the other builds your strategic advantage.
That brings us right into Section 3, navigating the outer kingdom through strategic realism.
Because let's be real, sometimes inner peace just isn't enough to protect you. You have to look outward. Machiavelli basically stripped away all that cozy moral comfort, teaching that having good intentions without psychological dominance just leaves you completely exposed. He famously argued that men should either be treated generously or destroyed, because half measures are incredibly dangerous. If you set soft boundaries with aggressive people, you don't neutralize the threat. You just create resentful enemies who know they can walk all over you.
And we really need to reframe the word ruthlessness. People hear that and immediately think of cruelty or someone just losing their temper. But true ruthlessness, it's ice-cold emotional discipline. If you lash out in anger, you become predictable. And predictability means you can be controlled. Being truly Machiavellian means you might feel a strong emotion, like anger or disappointment, but you completely separate that from your decision-making. You respond with calculated strategy, not a dramatic outburst.
So how do we actually move from just trying to be likable to having real psychological dominance? Because if your only strategy is being liked, you are way too safe and incredibly easy to manipulate. You've got to stop people-pleasing. Stop accepting disrespect just because you feel guilty saying no. Address it the exact second someone oversteps. You have to manage the narrative of who you are before someone else does it for you. And maybe most importantly, establish systematic consequences. If someone is always disrespecting your time, you don't yell at them. You simply become unavailable. Let the system do the heavy lifting for you.
This is exactly why high-level executive strategy today still reveres Machiavellian insights. Navigating the corporate ladder means constantly anticipating threats and controlling the environment around you. Executive search firms will tell you right out, weak leaders surround themselves with flatterers, while strong leaders take calculated risks and adapt. You absolutely have to read the room, figure out who feels threatened, and manage those dynamics like a pro.
All right, on to Section 4, the power of silence, statecraft, and restraint.
We usually think that the moment something happens, we have to act or speak up immediately. But there's this fascinating application of these philosophies where doing absolutely nothing is actually your strongest move. Strategic silence is a highly calculated pause. It's a deliberate non-response that practically forces your rival to make the first move. Knowing when not to act is just as crucial as knowing when to act. It creates ambiguity, and ambiguity makes you unpredictable and incredibly powerful.
You can actually see the geometry of this silence everywhere. Take the ancient Taoist concept of Wu Wei. It champions effortless, minimal intervention. Or look at India's modern pragmatic realism during the Ukraine war. They used strategic silence, refusing to be pushed into strict moral binaries so they could protect their own energy and trade interests. And look at Asian. They use collective silence on super contentious issues to prevent the whole organization from fracturing, favoring closed-door consensus over public grandstanding. It preserves maneuverability.
A really intense modern example of this is happening right now with strategic ambiguity in the Taiwan Strait. Washington basically refuses to give a hard yes or no on whether they would intervene. It's a concept called dual deterrence. If the US guaranteed intervention, Taiwan might declare independence. If they ruled it out, China might feel emboldened. By maintaining this calculated silence, the US forces both sides to assume the risk is just way too high to unilaterally change the status quo.
And this even works online against digital age disinformation. Think about it. When you formally rebut some wild, bad faith conspiracy theory, you're actually giving it the official acknowledgement it's desperate for. You're making it a debate. But by refusing to engage at all, you act like a digital circuit breaker. You literally starve the narrative of oxygen and stop the noise from gaining any real legitimacy.
Finally, Section 5, becoming calm and calculated. This is the ultimate synthesis.
So let's pull all of this together. The most formidable people out there, they integrate both the internal and the external. They use Stoic calm to accept the things they absolutely cannot move, and they use Machiavellian calculation to shape the things they can influence. Because listen, being calm without having strategic awareness just makes you a naive, vulnerable target. But being overly strategic without inner calm, that's total instability. You just become paranoid and reactive. You have to master yourself first so you can actually play the game without losing your soul in the process.
Which brings us to the end, into a question I want you to really think about. When the pressure is on, your true philosophy is going to reveal itself. So what truly guides your power? Are you anchored in emotional reactivity, letting the outside world pull your strings and shrink your potential? Or are you grounded in calm, strategic awareness? The choice between being a reactive victim to your surroundings or a calculated master of your environment is totally yours. Keep that internal locus of control strong and navigate your outer kingdom with precision. Thanks for diving into this explainer with me, and I will catch you in the next one.